The majority of Haikyuu's story is spent sympathizing and identifying with underdog players, from Hinata's attempts to overcome his lack of height, to Kurasuno competing against teams with more experience. Underdog stories populate Haikyuu's runtime. I never tire of watching characters exceed expectations, but no sports anime would be complete without exploring the favorites. Haikyuu has no shortage of prodigy character archetypes, and the most impactful of the bunch is the story's greatest player, Ushijima. Ushijima is the antithesis to Hinata. He leverages his overwhelming strength, technique, and left-handedness to score. Years of deliberate practice to hone his innate talents have earned him the status of top 3 ace in Japan. Hinata plays with pace and instinct, a raw unknown talent who believes totally that he will succeed, even if his skill has a long way to develop before that happens. Ushijima represents calm and Hinata chaos. In many ways, Ushijima becomes the series' greatest antagonist, as he alone stands in the way of Kurasuno's greatest goal while adhering to a playstyle that collides with our crows. Ushijima enables Shiratorizawa's strategy on relying on the brute force of one player. The playstyle of over-relying on a superstar is easy to root against and is fitting for the wall that Kurasuno has to overcome on their way to nationals. Ushijima fills the role of the overwhelming antagonist perfectly. So why, when reading his chapter at the end of the manga, did I find myself feeling admiration for his willingness to reinvent himself later in his career? He was a character I actively rooted against, but by the time we get the Jackal-Adler match, I was rooting for him. So how does a prodigy character that vows to crush our protagonist and adheres to an individualistic style of play become deeply inspiring? Furudate changes our perception of Ushijima throughout, and in the end we come to relate to his thankfulness, willingness to evolve, and most importantly, find ourselves in awe of the beauty in which he, and he alone, can play. Welcome to Annie Essays, where we overanalyze anime and manga. Each video on the channel is created under the belief that anime, same as film and literature, is worthy of in-depth criticism. Also, be on the lookout for upcoming announcements about my Patreon exclusive anime watch-alongs. If one player was to be considered the gold standard for perfection, it would be Ushijima. Everyone admires his skill, technique, and overwhelming strength. While you can make an argument that there are better players throughout the series, especially post-time skip, there is no denying that the best strikers all look up to him, shown through Kiryu and Sakusa's backstory chapters later in the manga. Even though Ushijima seems to embody everything a player should aspire to be, it should be noted that he has unique attributes, starting with his left-handedness, a trait that makes it difficult for defenders to receive if they only play against right-handed spikers. The spin he creates on his spikes, mixed with the power he can produce, makes it almost impossible for high school level defenders to receive him reliably. Ushijima's uniqueness is the key to how Furudate makes him relatable. Just like Ushijima, we all have aptitudes for different things. It is more about understanding and applying those advantages we were born with. Any apprehension or envy we have towards Ushijima disappears after spending a little time with him. Like his playstyle, Ushijima is even-keeled, a low-anxiety type of person with an extraordinary ability to focus on the task at hand, unclouded by outside distractions. He is earnest to a fault, and that reflects back into his playstyle. I think it may be a bit unfair to claim that playstyle as individualistic, like I did earlier. This is the initial judgment we have about Ushijima and Shiratorizawa, but it misses the mark. His playstyle is born from logic, here an understanding that Shiratorizawa's clearest path to scoring goes through the best player in the country. Ushijima doesn't demand spikes because he thinks poorly of his teammates, but because he knows it's the best path forward for the team. Despite the upset loss to Kurasuno, Shiratorizawa's previous success proved him right. Ushijima's relationship with Oikawa suggests he could shift his playstyle to match other talented players. Despite what Washio might think, if Oikawa did team up with Ushijima, I have no doubt Shiratorisawa's style would shift slightly to take advantage of both Ushijima being the best opposite in the country and Oikawa being a top-level setter. Once you understand why he leans so heavily into this style of play, you start to appreciate his insane accomplishments. A key factor in what makes sports compelling to watch is seeing players do extraordinary things. It is exhilarating watching Ushijima score through the toughest walls, and do it repeatedly despite the game wearing on his body. Haikyuu spends a lot of its time showing how players overcome their disadvantages on the court and find a way to compete with the best, but in the end, we only care about watching the best players compete. That often means the most naturally gifted players, and in Haikyuu's case, that's Ushijima. Just like Suki getting hooked on volleyball after he gets a huge block, watching Ushijima soar on his way to a perfect spike is enough to get anyone thinking, I want to try that too. Perfection here is infectious. Appreciating Ushijima's play is not something I ever thought I would say after his first encounter with Hinata, but by the manga's end, I can't help but admire every spike he makes. Like I discussed in my previous videos on Bokudo and Sakusa, Ushijima's character comes into full view near the manga's end when he gets a chapter solely focused on him. Here we learn of his time in America as he recovers from a failed spike early in his professional career. While in high school, Ushijima was all-powerful at the highest level, he exclusively goes up against players just as gifted as he is. Awaizumi says he doesn't want to see the great Ushijima become just a not-too-bad player, but to stay as a star. Of course, Ushijima thinks the same thing and elects to reconstruct how he spikes the ball. To be considered the best, you have to be willing to do anything to improve, even tearing down a style that worked for you in the past and recreating how you play. Ushijima's willingness to avoid stagnation speaks to a universal experience of leaving adolescence, a reality that you may have excelled at a subject or activity early in school, but soon enough you are no longer the leader of the pack. It would have been easy for Ushijima to continue playing the same way, to have a solid career and never challenge the foundation of his youth success. Just because things worked out when we were younger does not mean that will remain the case. Just like Ushijima, we should be willing to challenge our greatest strengths to ensure we can fulfill our potential. Just like Ushijima shows, you should never fall into the curse of stagnation. He wants to be the perfect ace, and in order to do that, he doesn't remain the same. I think a huge reason why Ushijima is able to evaluate the weaknesses in his game and is willing to change them is because of what he sees in a player like Hinata. Hinata lacks everything Ushijima has. He has no ability to receive, nor does he have technique that can rival the best players at the high school level. Yet he comes with an unmatched confidence that he will succeed that is based in no foundation in his current skill. Hinata embodies the dream of all players, that odds can be overcome, that one day you will succeed even if right now you don't have all the required skill to do so. Ushijima is a prodigy with attributes that none can match, and a work ethic that rivals anyone. He feels an overwhelming sense to crush the naivety of a player that claims that he can take on the world with no skill to back it up. But Hinata beats Ushijima, showing that raw strength isn't always enough. Hinata and Kurasuno overcame Shiratorizawa through unorthodox ways and constant evolution. Hinata never stops evolving, and by the time the end of National rolls around, he is almost unrecognizable to the player that Ushijima played against. In fact, Hinata even picks Ushijima's brain during the Ballboy arc, while asking how he approaches receiving. There is no doubt the loss to Kurasuno affected Ushijima. He doesn't go through a 180 change, nor does he particularly seem upset when they lose, but an internal shift happens, in understanding that he needs to match the evolution of a player like Hinata if he isn't going to get left behind one day. This is exactly what he thinks when he meets Awaizumi in America, and he is perfecting it during the Jackal-Adler match, where he becomes a greater version of his previous self. Time and time again, Haikyuu harps on the idea that aptitude is not enough to succeed. Sure, you can have some success in high school if you're 8 inches taller than the other players, but that success won't last if you don't have the work ethic to continue developing your skills. Beyond that, Ushijima shows one last angle to what makes sport and volleyball so compelling: the beauty of watching a player perform at the highest level. I believe sport is a type of art, and no character in Haikyuu embodies that more than Ushijima. Watching a player compete at the highest level and do things you've never seen before gives you a similar feeling to when you come across a painting, song, or film that moves you. It has a way of changing your perspective, a moment of athletic brilliance that transforms how you understand the world. You thought you were simply watching a game until a player like Ushijima comes along and redefines the norm. Art has the power to philosophically and emotionally change people. Ushijima's play has the same effect. He is Haikyuu's gold standard player, yet while he seems to be the perfect player, he is forced to recreate his strength. Even playing at the top for so many years, he still has to pursue betterment. We love the archetype of hard work beats talent that doesn't work hard. But what about the talent that does work hard? That is Ushijima. He shows that no matter how far up the ladder we find ourselves, we should reach for greater heights. Ushijima forces our protagonists to overcome the fear of playing against top competition. Players like Ushijima seem unfair when you find yourself opposing them. It's easy to feel like you don't stand a chance against such naturally talented players. But like anyone else, Ushijima has weaknesses that he must overcome on his way to the top. He is Furudate's secret weapon, a thematic thread that stitches together an essential concept for the story, that the best players should not be feared, but admired. Even the most gifted players must start from the bottom of the ladder. The reason we play is to find better players, to come across truly challenging competition. The only way we can do that is by needing what makes us unique. Ushijima's strength becomes the pinnacle of Haikyuu's story, a strength that creates an almost perfect volleyball player that no matter how many times he scores on you, you can't help but find the way he plays beautiful. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be on the lookout for announcements about my upcoming Patreon watch-alongs. I'm thinking we may be starting with a Haikyuu rewatch. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.